Welcome, dear listener, to a tale of resilience, compassion, and the unexpected twists life can take for a young woman determined to beat the odds. Enjoy watching. Ariel Donovan dragged her tired body up the 4 flights of stairs to her dingy studio apartment. Another exhausting 12-hour shift of scrubbing floors and cleaning toilets at the prestige consulting offices had left the petite 21-year-old utterly drained. She fumbled with her keys, finally letting herself into the cramped 250-square-foot space she called home. Ariel sighed as she took in the peeling paint, grimy windows, and threadbare furniture. It wasn't much, but it was all she could afford on a janitor's meager salary. She had to grow up so fast after the tragic death of her wealthy parents 2 years ago. Some days, the grief and loneliness still overwhelmed her. Shaking off her melancholy, Ariel grabbed a cup of ramen noodles, her usual dinner. As she waited for the water to boil, she thought back to her privileged childhood, now nothing more than faded memories. "Higher, Daddy, higher!" 8-year-old Ariel shrieked with glee as her father Nathaniel pushed her on the swings. Her mother Victoria looked on with a serene smile, her blonde hair shining in the sunlight. The sprawling grounds of the Donovan estate stretched out around the happy family. Nathaniel was a successful investment banker, and Victoria a socialite known for her impeccable fashion sense and lavish charity events. Ariel was their pride and joy, a sweet girl who loved animals, tea parties with her dolls, and most of all, her doting parents. Life was a fairy tale, until that horrible rainy night in November. 9-year-old Ariel had been left with the nanny while her parents attended a gala. Their loyal driver Edward was behind the wheel as they headed home in the Mercedes, eager to kiss their little girl goodnight. Suddenly, a delivery truck skidded on the slick roads, its tires hydroplaning. It crossed the center line and slammed into the Mercedes in a sickening crunch of metal. Nathaniel and Victoria died on impact, their lives cut short in an instant. Edward suffered a broken pelvis, but survived. When the police came to the door later that night, Ariel's nanny collapsed in anguished sobs, unable to find the words to tell the innocent child that she was now an orphan. "Ungrateful brat, get down here and do these dishes!" Mona Baker's shrill voice rang out. 13-year-old Ariel cringed, setting down her tattered schoolbooks. She slowly descended the rickety stairs from the attic room she shared with her 2 foster sisters. In the 3 years since her parents' death, Ariel's life had become a living hell. With no close relatives to take her in, she had been sent to live with the Bakers, a lazy, greedy couple with 2 spoiled children of their own. The Bakers had lied and put on a good show to gain custody of Ariel, but behind closed doors, they treated her like a servant, forcing her to do all the cooking and cleaning while they loafed around. They lived in a rundown house, content to subsist on the generous stipend they received for fostering. "About time," Mona sneered, as Ariel entered the cluttered kitchen and began scrubbing the mountain of dirty plates. "Hurry it up, and I better not hear about you complaining at school again. You're lucky we took you in after your rich parents got themselves killed. Rotten apple doesn't fall far from the tree, I say." Ariel gritted her teeth, holding back tears. She often dreamed of fleeing the Bakers, but felt trapped, afraid she'd end up on the streets. "Just 5 more years until I'm 18, she told herself. "Then I can get away from these horrible people." Little did young Ariel know that freedom would come with struggles of its own. The bus brakes squealed as it pulled up to the curb. 18-year-old Ariel stepped off, a small, battered suitcase in hand. She gazed up at the towering skyscrapers of the city, her eyes wide. She had finally escaped the Bakers on her birthday, ignoring their fuming protests. With barely $500 to her name, she took the first bus out of the dismal town she had been trapped in for 5 long years. Now Ariel found herself alone in the bustling metropolis. The sounds of honking horns and sirens assaulted her ears as people rushed by without a second glance. She felt a wave of panic rising in her throat. What was she thinking, coming here with no plan? Forcing herself to stay calm, Ariel began walking, keeping an eye out for rent signs in windows. An hour later, with aching feet, she finally spotted a handwritten notice. "Room for rent, $500 a month." The door was answered by a hunched elderly woman with wary eyes. "Yes?" she asked suspiciously. "I'm here about the room for rent," Ariel said, trying to sound confident. The woman looked her up and down, taking in her shabby clothes and worn suitcase. "Rent's due on the 1st, no exceptions," the woman said gruffly. "No loud music, no visitors, no drugs. You cause any trouble, you're out, no refunds. Understand?" Ariel nodded vigorously. "Yes, ma'am." The woman stepped back to let her inside the musty-smelling house. Ariel handed over nearly all the money she had, feeling a sense of relief. She had a roof over her head, at least for a month. She would figure out the rest later. Over the next 2 years, Ariel bounced between low-paying jobs, struggling to make ends meet. She waited tables, worked in factories, and cleaned houses for the wealthy. Memories of her own family's extravagant lifestyle taunted her as she scrubbed their marble floors. Finally, Ariel landed a steadier position as an office janitor. The pay was still meager, but it was reliable work. Little did she know, the office held surprises that would upend her life once again. "Donovan!" a sharp voice barked. Ariel looked up from the trash can she was emptying to see Dennis Reitman, the obnoxious head of sales, snapping his fingers impatiently. "I needed that report copied 5 minutes ago. What's the holdup?" Ariel bit her tongue, fighting the urge to remind the pompous jerk that she was a janitor, not his personal assistant. Dennis was notorious for his massive ego, condescending attitude, and generally making all the hourly employees' lives miserable. "I think you have me confused with someone else, Mr. Reitman," Ariel said, keeping her tone neutral. "I'm the janitor. If you need copies, you'll have to ask one of the admins." Dennis's face reddened. "I don't have time for your excuses. When I give you an order, I expect it to be followed. Capiche?" Before Ariel could reply, Dennis stormed off, grumbling under his breath. Ariel sighed and got back to work. Some days, she wondered if she would ever catch a break. Unbeknownst to Ariel, Dennis had it out for her. He resented the peons, as he called them, thinking himself far above the lowly janitors and secretaries. So when he overheard Ariel venting to a coworker about his boorish behavior, he decided she needed to be knocked down a peg. Dennis started complaining to the higher-ups, exaggerating Ariel's purported lack of work ethic and insubordination. He was determined to have her fired after the upcoming client meetings. Ariel had no idea of her precarious position as she left work that fateful evening, walking to the bus stop in the pouring rain. Her life was about to change in ways she never could have imagined. The rain beat down as Ariel hurried through the streets the next morning, her flimsy umbrella no match for the deluge. Puddles soaked through her threadbare sneakers. She was already late for the big meeting day, thanks to missing her first bus. As she cut through an alley, a strange sound caught Ariel's attention over the rainfall, a sort of muffled crying? She stopped short, looking around for the source. There, nestled behind a dumpster, was a soaked cardboard box. Ariel cautiously approached it, lifting the flap. She gasped. Inside lay a tiny baby, a newborn from the looks of it, wrapped in a thin blanket and wailing weakly. Ariel's heart clenched. Who would abandon a defenseless infant in this weather? She gently lifted the baby into her arms, cooing softly. "Shh, it's okay," she murmured. "I've got you now." The baby's cry subsided as he nestled into her warmth. Ariel glanced at her watch, realizing she was now extremely late. But she couldn't just leave the poor child here. Cradling the baby close, Ariel hurried the last few blocks to the office building. In the lobby, she tried to explain the situation to the baffled security guard. He called upstairs, and moments later, an irate Dennis came charging off the elevator. "Donovan," he bellowed, "you better have a damn good explanation for this. Thanks to you, I've been stalling the CEO and trying to placate our clients for half an hour." "I'm sorry, Mr. Reitman," Ariel said breathlessly, "but I found this abandoned baby and I couldn't just—" "Does it look like I care about some brat?" Dennis snarled. "Your job is to clean this place, not drag in every stray you find on the street. You're fired, effective immediately. I want you out of here in 10 minutes or I'll have security throw you out." Tears pricked Ariel's eyes as she clutched the baby tighter. But just then, a commanding voice interjected. "What's going on here?" Ariel turned to see Vince Davenport, the owner and CEO of Prestige Consulting, striding into the lobby, his brow furrowed. Dennis immediately pasted on an ingratiating smile. "Ah, Mr. Davenport," he simpered. "Just handling a little personnel issue, nothing to trouble yourself with." Vince held up a hand, silencing him. He turned to Ariel with concern. "Are you all right, miss? What's this about a baby?" Haltingly, Ariel explained finding the infant abandoned in the alley. Vince's expression softened as he looked at the now sleeping child in her arms. Ariel was surprised to see a glimmer of pain in his eyes. "You did the right thing, young lady," Vince said gently. "I know all too well the tragedy of losing a child. My wife and infant son died in a car accident 5 years ago. I would give anything to hold my boy again." He turned to Dennis, his gaze hardening. "As for you, we'll discuss your lack of basic human compassion later. For now, get back upstairs and salvage what you can of the meetings." As Dennis slunk away, Vince placed a hand on Ariel's shoulder. "Take the rest of the day off," he said kindly. "Get this little one checked out at the hospital. We'll make sure he's placed with a good family." Blinking back grateful tears, Ariel nodded. For the first time in a long time, she felt a flicker of hope that things might be looking up. 2 weeks later, Ariel was called into Vince's office. She fidgeted nervously, wondering if she was in trouble. But Vince greeted her warmly, gesturing for her to take a seat. "I have some good news," he said, smiling. "We were able to track down that baby's mother. She's a scared teenager, not much older than you. She's agreed to sign over custody, so he can be adopted by a loving family." Ariel's heart leapt. She had been worrying about the little boy, whom she had nicknamed Vinny after Vince's kindness. An idea began to take shape in her mind. "Mr. Davenport," she said hesitantly, "I know this might sound crazy, but what if I adopted him? Vinny, I mean. I know I don't have much, but I could give him a good home. He deserves to be loved." Vince looked at her thoughtfully. "It's a big responsibility," he said. "But I can see how much you care for him. I think you'd make a wonderful mother," Vince continued. "And I want to help. I'm giving you a promotion to executive assistant, with a substantial raise. I'll also provide a stipend for Vinny's expenses until you get on your feet." Ariel's jaw dropped. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Mr. Davenport, I don't know what to say. Thank you, from the bottom of my heart." Vince waved off her gratitude. "You've had a tough go of things, Ariel. But I see your potential and your compassion. You deserve a chance to build a good life for yourself and Vinny." Tears streamed down Ariel's face as she impulsively hugged her boss. For the first time, she felt like she had someone truly in her corner.